Josh and Sam had always been the closest of friends, bonded by years of shared adventures and secrets. But as they stood at the threshold of the dark and foreboding woods on this cold and moonless night, even their unshakable bond would be tested by the horrors that lay ahead. They had been cooped up in their houses all week, restless and itching for something to do. So when Josh suggested they sneak out and explore the woods, Sam didn't hesitate for a moment. They quickly dressed in their warmest clothes, careful not to wake their sleeping parents, and met at the edge of the woods, their hearts pounding with excitement and fear. As they stepped into the darkness, they knew that they were venturing into a place from which they might never return. The boys knew they shouldn't be out in the woods at night. The darkness seemed to suffocate them, pressing in from all sides like a living, breathing thing. The trees were tall and twisted, their branches gnarled and black against the moonlit sky. The air was heavy with the smell of rot and decay, and the ground was spongy under their feet, as if the earth itself were trying to swallow them up. As they stumbled through the underbrush, Sam could feel the weight of unseen eyes upon them. He had the creeping sensation that they were being watched, that something ancient and malevolent was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Josh, however, seemed oblivious to the danger. He laughed and joked, trying to lighten the mood, but his words sounded hollow and forced in the eerie silence of the forest. Sam knew they should turn back, that they were tempting fate by venturing deeper into the heart of the woods. But it was too late now. They were lost. The trees seemed to stretch on forever in every direction. The only way out was to keep moving forward, even as the darkness closed in around them and the fear gnawed at their guts. They were in a scene out of a Blair Witch Project, and there was no telling what horrors awaited them in the depths of the cursed woods. As they walked, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He kept turning around, expecting to see glowing eyes staring back at him, but each time there was nothing there. Josh just laughed and told him to stop being paranoid. And then, just as Sam was starting to wonder if they would ever find their way back home, they stumbled upon an abandoned house nestled in a clearing. It was a decrepit old place, with peeling paint and broken windows. The roof sagged in places, as if the weight of the years had finally become too much to bear. Sam could feel the unease growing in his chest as they approached the house. It was the kind of place that belonged in a Brothers Grimm story, a witch's lair waiting to lure in unsuspecting children. The windows were dark and empty, like the empty sockets of a skull. The door hung crooked on its hinges, creaking in the gentle breeze. Despite his misgivings, Josh was drawn to the house like a moth to a flame. He walked up to the door and tried the handle, but it was locked. Undeterred, he circled around to the back of the house, searching for a way inside. Sam followed reluctantly, his nerves stretched to the breaking point. He had a feeling that this was a place of darkness and danger, a place where the line between the living and the dead was thin and easily crossed. He wanted nothing more than to turn and run, to leave this cursed place behind and never look back. But Josh was already at the back door, jimmying it open with a crowbar he had found in the weeds. Sam knew he had no choice but to follow, even as the sense of dread grew stronger with each step. He knew that whatever waited for them inside that abandoned house, it was something he would rather not face alone. Despite his reservations, Josh insisted they go inside and explore. The door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, revealing a cluttered and dusty interior. As they made their way through the house, they found all sorts of occult artifacts, pentagrams etched into the floorboards, black candles burned down to the nub, the smell of death and decay hanging in the air, and strange symbols etched into the walls. Sam couldn't shake the feeling that this place was cursed, and he begged Josh to leave. Despite Sam's growing unease, Josh was determined to keep exploring the abandoned house. He was like a kid in a candy store, drawn to every dark corner and hidden crevice. He rummaged through drawers and cabinets, searching for anything of value or interest. And then, just when Sam was about to lose all hope of getting out of that cursed place alive, Josh let out a triumphant cry. He had found a book, hidden away in a drawer beneath a pile of old newspapers. The book was ancient and worn, its pages browned with age. As Sam looked closer, he saw that it was filled with disturbing drawings depicting a beast rising from the depths of hell and scenes of cannibalism. His stomach turned at the sight of it. Sam tried to convince Josh not to read it, but Josh was convinced that nothing bad would happen. He had always been the curious one, the one who had to know every secret and explore every mystery. And so, with a sense of growing foreboding, he opened the book and began to read. As he turned the pages, he felt a creeping sense of dread wash over him. The words seemed to writhe on the page, as if they were alive and trying to lure him into some dark, forbidden realm. He could feel the darkness calling to him, tempting him with promises of power and knowledge beyond his wildest dreams. As Josh began reciting the ancient incantations from the tattered book, a cold shiver ran down his spine. He could feel the malevolent energy emanating from the pages, and he knew that they were playing with fire. But as the words left Josh's lips, the room began to grow colder. The shadows seemed to lengthen, reaching out like twisted fingers towards the boys. Josh's bravado faltered as he realized that something was wrong. The air was thick with the smell of rotten eggs, death and burning sulfur, and a rumbling sound filled their ears. Suddenly, the floor beneath them began to shake, as if the very foundations of the house were being torn apart. Suddenly, Josh stopped reading and closed the book. The boys held their breath, not daring to move a muscle as they waited for something, anything, to happen. But as the seconds ticked by, nothing happened. The room was back to normal, and the eerie calmness of the woods returned. As Josh and Sam left the woods, now Josh couldn't shake the feeling that something was following them. He kept turning around, convinced he could see yellow eyes staring at him from the trees. But every time he looked, the eyes disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. Despite the creeping fear that threatened to overwhelm them, the boys made it out of the woods and vowed never to return. They went their separate ways, both shaken by the events of the night. But as Josh walked home, he started experiencing a strange and painful transformation. His bones began rearranging and growing in his body, causing him intense agony. He knew deep down that he had brought this upon himself by reading the forbidden incantation in that ancient book. Desperate for answers, he turned to the internet and began frantically searching for any information on the book and its powers. After hours of scouring various forums and websites, he stumbled upon a detailed description of the transformation that was occurring within him. According to the information he found, the book had the power to cause a person to transform into the perfect vessel for the demon Beelzebub, one of the most evil and powerful princes of hell. Josh continued reading the article. Beelzebub, also known as the Lord of the Flies, is a demonic figure found in the Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. In the Hebrew Bible, Beelzebub is described as a prince of demons and is often associated with the devil. According to some religious traditions, Beelzebub is one of the most powerful and feared demons in existence, with the ability to possess and control the bodies and minds of humans. Those who fall under the influence of Beelzebub are said to be plagued by demonic thoughts and urges, and may even exhibit strange, otherworldly powers. Some stories depict Beelzebub as a grotesque and monstrous being, with wings, horns, and claws. In many cultures, Beelzebub is seen as a symbol of evil and corruption, and is often invoked in rituals and spells designed to invoke or banish malevolent spirits. Those who encounter Beelzebub are said to be at great risk of falling victim to his dark influence, and may suffer dire consequences if they fail to resist his tempting offers. So, Beelzebub is a very terrifying being to encounter. The transformation continued, and the pain was excruciating, like nothing Josh had ever experienced before. It felt as if his bones were being ripped from his body, twisted and contorted into something unnatural. His skin stretched and tore as his muscles bulged and writhed beneath the surface. A sickening series of cracks and pops filled the air as his body underwent a grotesque transformation. Josh stumbled to the bathroom, his legs barely able to support him as he collapsed in front of the mirror. What he saw there made him wish he had never looked. His teeth were falling out, one by one, replaced by a set of sharp, needle-like fangs that dripped with saliva. Blood and gore filled the sink as his mouth underwent this unholy transformation. But the worst was yet to come. Horns began to push their way through the flesh on his forehead, tearing through skin and muscle as they emerged. And with each passing moment, Josh could feel his mind filling with dark, malevolent thoughts. The urge to kill and shed blood consumed him, driving him to the brink of madness. Finally, Josh's transformation was complete. He fell to the floor, his body writhing in agony as he tried to come to terms with the monster he had become. Sam stood in his usual spot outside of school the next day, waiting for his friend Josh to arrive. But as the minutes ticked by, Josh failed to show up. Sam shrugged it off and headed to his first class, thinking that they could catch up during a break or after school. However, as the day went on and classes passed, Josh remained conspicuously absent, and Sam had a feeling it had something to do with that book. The rest of the day was consumed by talks of a string of vicious and brutal murders committed in their neighborhood. A sense of unease settled over the community, hanging heavy in the air like a dark cloud. The streets were eerily quiet, as if the very life had been sucked out of them. Word had spread of the string of vicious murders that had rocked the neighborhood to its core. The victims, all brutally slain in their own homes, had been found with grotesque wounds that seemed to have been inflicted by some sort of wild animal. But as the day wore on, rumors began to circulate that the killer was no animal at all, but rather a deranged human with an insatiable thirst for blood. Some whispered that the murders were so gruesome, they made the infamous helter-skelter killings look like child's play. As the townspeople huddled in fear, the police and school administration considered closing the school until the killer was caught. But for Sam, the fear hit close to home when he learned that his friend Josh was missing. Determined to find out the truth, Sam raced to Josh's house, his heart pounding in his chest. When he arrived, he was met with the shocking news that Josh's parents hadn't seen him since the previous evening. It was then that Sam realized the full extent of the horror that had descended upon their community. Josh's disappearance was no coincidence. Something terrible had happened to him after he read that cursed incantation, and Sam knew that he had to do everything in his power to uncover the truth, no matter how frightening it may be. As the string of murders escalated into a full-blown rampage, the town was thrown into chaos. No one knew who or what was responsible for the bloodshed, but one thing was certain: anyone who ventured out into the streets was met with a swift and violent demise. The neighborhood was on lockdown, with families barricading themselves inside their homes and praying for deliverance. The days dragged on, and the town was plunged into darkness, both literally and figuratively. The sun seemed to have vanished from the sky, and the internet and phone lines were down, cutting off all communication with the outside world. It was as if the town had been completely erased from the map, as if it had been swallowed up by some unseen darkness. At night, the air was filled with the sound of taunting laughter, a sound that seemed to come straight from the pits of hell. It was a sound that sent shivers down the spine and turned the blood to ice. No one knew where it was coming from, but it seemed to be everywhere at once, emanating from the shadows and creeping through the cracks in the walls. As the bodies continued to pile up, the town descended into panic. People were too terrified to leave their homes, and those who did were never seen again. The streets were empty, save for the occasional flash of a creature darting through the darkness. It was as if the town had been abandoned by the rest of humanity, left to rot and be picked apart by whatever monsters lurked in the shadows. In the face of such terror, it seemed as though the end of the world had come to this small town. And as the darkness closed in, it seemed as though there was no hope of escape, no way to outrun the horrors that lurked in the night. Sam and his family were huddled in their living room, their blinds drawn tightly shut and their windows and doors barricaded to keep out the beast that was hunting them. Sam knew that it was his friend, Josh, who was responsible for cursing their town and transforming into this abomination. But he couldn't bring himself to tell his family the truth. He wanted to accept responsibility, but the weight of it was too much to bear. Suddenly, Sam saw two yellow eyes peering through a small crack in the barricade, the same eyes he and Josh had seen in the woods on that cursed night. Josh knew that Sam was there and he let out a heinous, evil laugh, taunting Sam and his family with the horrors he planned to inflict upon them. And then, in a burst of violence, Josh broke through the window and towered over Sam and his family. Sam didn't want to look at the grotesque monster his best friend had become, but he couldn't look away. What he saw was far worse than his wildest nightmares. Josh's skin was stretched tight over his towering, massive frame, pierced with bony spines that dripped with blood. His body was covered in the gore of his victims, his eyes glowing with a sinister, yellow light. He taunted Sam and his family, blaming them for the monster he had become. Sam's heart raced with fear and guilt as he watched Josh loom over them, his twisted, demonic form filling the room with a sense of impending doom. But despite the terror he felt, Sam knew he had to do something to protect his family. He stood up, mustering all the courage he had, and faced Josh head-on. "You may have cursed our town and turned into this monster, but I won't let you hurt my family," Sam shouted, his voice shaking with emotion. Josh let out a guttural growl, baring his teeth and claws at Sam. "You think you can stop me, boy? I am a force of destruction, and there is nothing you can do to stop me," he snarled. Josh glared at Sam with eyes that blazed like fire, his voice a rasping growl as he spat out his words. "You did this," he cried, his voice filled with an unearthly agony. "You cursed me, And you dare to play the victim? You want to sit on your high horse and act like the Almighty, but do you not think you should have tried to intervene? This is the problem with you humans. You're weak, fragile, and dumb. Sam trembled before Josh's wrath, his heart pounding in his chest as the demon continued to speak. I'll give you a choice, Josh sneered. You can grow up and take responsibility, and save your family from me peeling the flesh from their bones. Or you can join me in the pits of hell for eternity. With a shaky voice, Sam replied, yes, of course, thank you. I accept full responsibility. I should have stopped you, it's all my fault. Josh's lips curled into a cruel smile. It is all your fault, but I am a demon, and an apology is not enough. I'll spare your family, but only if you willingly join me in the depths of the underworld. Sam hesitated, his mind racing as he considered the demon's offer. Only if you let the rest of the town be, and promise to never return, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Josh's laughter echoed through the darkness like the sound of 1,000 screams. Yes, I'll spare your town, but I'll be back, he promised. One day another unsuspecting fool will wander into those woods and conjure up a new vessel for me, and I'll return to my rampage, and I won't go so easily. With those words, Josh and Sam disappeared into the darkness, descending into the pits of hell together. And as the flames of the underworld licked at his heels, and the screams of the damned filled his ears, and the smell of burning flesh filled his nostrils, Sam knew that he were doomed to spend eternity in the depths of hell.